Hello everyone. This is our last assignment for our Art 101 course, and that means we'll be doing a self-portrait. So last week you dwelled on drawing skulls to kind of give you an idea of the structure, the underlayment of why your skin looks a certain way and how it is affected by the skull. And then you had an opportunity to draw 3 views of your portrait in frontal, profile, as well as in 3/4. So today you'll be doing, or this week, you'll be doing a frontal view. You will be using a mirror, so you will be the poser as well as the drawer. So what I have here is all my charcoal supplies. So the first thing you'll do is you'll actually lay your paper down, mask it off with your tape, then lay in you can use the vine charcoal or the new pastel charcoal, your preference, and basically put in the gray tone, and then buff that in with a paper towel. And then you will do the initial shape layer or sketch, and that's what I've already done, and we're all quite familiar with that layer, so I didn't feel that it was necessary to necessarily show that. It's pretty straightforward. It's real linear, loose, and it talks more about creating the bigger basic shapes of your subject matter. So you can see that here. You can see just a hint of the element of the ball and oval. You see the cross, the vertical line, as well as the horizontal axis that's laid in. And then just the basics of my apparel. I have my hair shape, etc. And then you guys will also be doing this, where you will photograph yourself, so I have something to use to grade against in terms of the accuracy and how well you did. I made 2 photos, one with glasses on, one without. I think today I'm going to go with the glasses on. I haven't done that before, so why not? It's a nice challenge. I have my light source right here, which will be hitting or coming in from the sides. That will cause some pretty nice shadows. And then you can see my mirror is right here in front of me on this small tabletop easel. So as I'm going to be making the drawing, you won't be seeing my mirrored image. You'll just be seeing me creating the drawing. So for the sake of, what is he drawing or what's he drawing from, I'm actually drawing from this mirror. Okay, so it's a live drawing of myself. I am not drawing from my photograph because this is a perceptual drawing class and it's all about drawing from life. Okay, so we've covered all that. So let me put the camera in the camera stand. There we go. All right, and we should have a pretty nice view of my drawing. Yes, we do. Excellent. Okay, so again, the first part of this drawing is you're going to establish the ball and oval, if you prefer that. The other version is to do the ball and cross, which is the Andrew Loomis version that I kind of showed you. So you have, 2 different approaches that you can come at this with, and I imagine that one of those was more worked out better for you. Then the next thing is using it says to use your charcoal pencil to lay out the sketch layer. The reason why I did it in the click eraser is so that you could actually see it. When I made another video, I started it, when I was laying in the sketch with the pencil, a lot of the information was kind of lost because of the dark tonal background. So, if you do want to do this as a reductive manner, that's fine as well. So once I've established the sketch, now looking in the mirror, I'm now going to pull out or subtract all the areas that are in light, or the light tones. So that means all the values that are lighter than this gray background. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with my click eraser and start hitting those areas that are very light. I'm going to do the brightest ones first. So that means I'll be using heavy pressure in an attempt to go back down to the white of the paper. And then as I move away from it, I use less pressure, so it kind of gradates. So again, the amount of pressure you're exerting with this will take a certain amount of information off, and you can control or the degree of values that you're creating with your click eraser, or any of the erasers for that matter. So remember to always constantly look, observe, and attempt to remove the shape that you see and not what you think you see. Be careful that you don't default to generalizing information. Otherwise it will look generic, and most likely it will not look like you. And the whole point of this exercise, based on the practice that you've done last week, that you should be able to get quite a strong likeness of yourself using your drawing medium. Now granted, last week we did use graphite, and the main reason was to bring you back to a comfort level, since the majority of the semester was using graphite. So that was kind of some of the reasoning behind that. And now we're returning with charcoal. And for the most part, the charcoal materials that are in your kit are pretty similar to graphite in terms of the ergonomics with the charcoal pencils and the erasers. The only difference is the sort of chalk-like sticks that are different. So you could actually do this whole drawing, if you wish, in the charcoal pencils, if you feel like you really didn't like the charcoal sticks. I used the vine charcoal to create the toned background in this. Alright, again, I'm just removing all the areas that are lighter than this gray background. So since my light source is coming from over here, my hair is kind of illuminated. I'm not going to go too much because it becomes almost like detail work. I also have a light on behind me which kind of illuminates the back of me here. I've got some information here on my glasses. And it almost creates an omnipotent glow behind me, which is actually kind of cool. Not to say that I'm godly, but the effect that the light is kind of creating. So you probably noticed that this is pretty rough. I'm coming in and I'm not doing a whole lot of perhaps precision or spending too much time in any specific areas. That it's actually pretty loose. But in this initial beginning start, after the sketch method where you're dealing with these lighter tones, gives you an opportunity to kind of work out where everything's at, but for you it also kind of sets where everything is in terms of a pseudo or early detail. Alright, so that is the basics of those lighter tones. So now I'm going to come in with my charcoal pencil as soon as I can find the one I want. Alright, here it is. So I have a 2B and I neglected to sharpen it. Embarrassing. Do that real quick. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to come in and deal with all the values that are now darker than this background and where they're at. So for instance, the frames of my glasses are a lot darker, but they're not per se pitch black, so I won't use a lot of pressure, and I'm using the lighter charcoal pencil. And the charcoal pencils I will be using today will be my 2B as well as my 4B. And my 4B pencil is slightly darker than my 2B. So laying in the frames of my glasses. And again, you always want to look again, then draw. It's kind of like a carpenter. Measure once, measure twice, then cut. And really that prevents, in terms of the drawing, by observing once and then twice, kind of assuring what you're drawing, and you commit it to memory really quickly, and then you're more apt to not generalize it and make a poor version of it. Alright, so there's my frames of my glasses. Not really liking it. Looks like this side is a little bit bigger than the other, so I'll bring that in. I'll extend these out just a hint. There we go. Alright, then I'm going to come into my hair area. I'm basically going to block in these darker shapes, and I'm just kind of running, and I'm looking at the flow or the direction that my hair is. So that's what these sort of scant lines are up here are denoting. And then down in here along my hairline, it's pretty dark, so just kind of run that as a contour line. My neighbor got a new motorcycle, and he's been running up and down the street on it. I guess I'm happy for him. It's kind of loud and annoying, but at least he's happy. Alright, so laying in the darker areas of the hair. And again, you guys probably have noticed that as the semester has continued on, you can always layer over this or dilute. So don't feel like this is the one shot and only time you can lay this in. So kind of going over in between the highlight areas, and so hair sometimes has this sort of extremes similar to like metal and glass. You can have high contrast areas of dark to white side by side. Alright. So still working on the hair. This is my sideburns, kind of bushy. I needed to get a haircut. Just kind of being real, almost haphazard to break up the hair, but I don't want to go in too much definition here because I want to save my details towards the end. So I'm just going to lightly just roughen the rest of my hair shape, and then I can come back to it later and then really get involved in it. Alright. So the face is really starting to come along pretty nicely. Now I'm going to go back into the sort of the skin and the face, get the eyes going. Looking at my spacing. What's interesting about glasses, and those of you who wear them have probably noticed it, that depending on your prescription, your glasses may make your eyes appear slightly smaller or larger, and some of you may really have no effect to your eyes at all, but that's something to look for as you're doing that. Okay, now I have a lazy eye, so I'm going to put that in, so don't feel like I really screwed up that eye. I actually physically have the lazy eye. Constantly looking, constantly checking, assessing as I do this. I really don't want to go back too much to redo information if I don't have to. The other thing that you'll notice is that your glasses will create almost more of a shadow effect in your ocular area, kind of giving it almost more emphasis, that it will seem darker. Obviously you'll have the frames will be casting shadows across your face. That's what these lines are indicating, so that's the cast shadow from my frames. And then since I've got several light sources, I have multiple cast shadows from my frames going across my face. So don't feel like this is he putting in like a mustache? It's not a mustache. Those are the cast shadows. I'm going to drop down. I'm going to take a break from the eyes and come into my nostrils. Remember, your nostrils aren't a true circle, and everybody has a unique opening to their nostrils. So be careful you don't generalize this area. And because this is a perceptual drawing, also you notice nothing is heavily outlined. Everything is done in a sort of a light-handed manner. And if I do need to make a darker area, I can do it just by layering. But you notice I'm not heavily outlining my information. So the underplane of the underside of the nose where the nostril openings are is in shadow. So I'm going to indicate that. And then remember, my light source is coming from over here. So more of this side of the nose kind of goes more into shadow, but it'll be lighter on this side. And it makes this sort of interesting shadow here. And then down to my mouth. And I just check, remember, where your pupils are is about the width of your mouth. And my wandering eye over here is kind of F's that up, so I'm going to kind of mark it in there, about an approximation. And then you'll probably, all of you have also noticed that your upper lip is not only differently shaped than your lower lip, but your upper lip has a tendency to be slightly darker than your lower lip. So, but you don't want to heavily outline it. You notice I haven't heavily outlined it. I've just kind of put it in a tone. And then my mouth is, I'm just going to have it slightly where the lips kind of part, but not. And then I'm not going to do anything like a description like the top here to the bottom. I'm just going to indicate kind of the sides. And then get the underside of the lip. There's just this vague shadow right here. Here's my chin. And just but looking at how the light is hitting my face. Now remember, the light source is coming from this way, so this got really lightened. And for the most part, the shadow of my face on this side is not too strong, but I'm just going to give a little bit more emphasis here, kind of along the contour in the lower part of my jaw, and then it will creep up here to give a pretty nice sort of fade effect. Okay, then it's dark in my neck area on this side, so I want to lay that in a little bit more heavy-handed, kind of like what I did up here. So again, you notice that nothing is being heavily outlined. I'm just almost like blocking in an area and just kind of filling it. And then based off the pressure is what I'm doing. Okay, and so what I'm noticing is that the liner, so I have this hoodie on. So here's the hood, and then the inside of the hood, the liner, is a lot darker than it is out here. And value-wise, this liner is a lot darker than my skin, so I'm going to really pour that on with pressure, and then that will make that separation. And then I see just a hint of that over here. So the liner of the hood almost kind of creates like a subtle framing. And then I have a green t-shirt on, and green t-shirts tend to be pretty dark, not quite as dark as the hoodie's liner. And I'll probably come back over the liner again with probably the new pastel just to make it darker. So this is the green t-shirt. So I'm looking. I'm going to slightly tone this highlight area, just like that. There we go. You guys ever notice when you wear a hoodie, it kind of pulls your t-shirt up closer to your face? Sometimes it's kind of annoying. Meddling hoodies. Alright, I'm going to come back into the eyes. So you notice I'm kind of bouncing around. It's not like I get bored with the areas, it's just that as things develop, I want to kind of keep everything developed at the same level. I don't want to surpass an area over another. So with that in mind, just kind of keeping everything moving along at the same level or rate. I got the angle of my glasses wrong, so I'm going to change that. There we go. Okay, looking at this shadow underneath my chin, it gets lighter as it moves this way. So using less pressure as I move over that way. It's pretty dark under here. You notice my construction lines have disappeared for the most part. Okay, so I got the eyes, and now you remember from the last week, when you do your eyes, you want just a subtle shadow on both sides to give more emphasis that, I mean, your eye is basically a ball that sits inside the eye socket, and then it's held in place by the nerve cord and the muscles, as well as your eyelids, kind of hold it in place. But in order to kind of show that ball, you just put just slight shadows in the corners of the eyes and have them fade towards the actual iris and pupil, and then it gives that effect that they look like rounded balls. Alright, come back to the mouth, kind of give more emphasis between where the lips kind of slightly part, a little bit more darker on this side of my upper lip, and I'm going to give this just a little bit more shadow over here. There we go. Alright, I'm going to come down into the hoodie, and my hoodie is kind of it's gray, so I want that to separate from the background. So I'm going to slightly tone even over my highlights to give the visual impression that this shape is separate of the background. So it's almost as though you're filling in the background, and like you did when you put your tone in. You notice I'm going in one direction. And then over here it's lighter because of the light source, so I'll go really light-handed. I'm still going to go over my highlights, but with less pressure to give the illusion that this area or side is slightly more in light than it is on the opposite side. Again, you notice I'm going in one direction, keeping that consistent. Alright, and then my head kind of casts just a slight shadow right here, so I'm going to deal with the cast shadow. I can actually cross that. And this is just a really light layer using light pressure. Just like that. Alright, then over here I have the creases in the hoodie. Just kind of give those more emphasis as I'm looking. Come back over here and do the creases. It's just like when we were doing folds on the drapery. And as you come out of the canyon, you use less pressure, so it kind of gradates. But then in the core of it, or the deepest part, you want to use a fair amount of pressure, because remember, darks have the tendency to recede, and then lights or highlights have a tendency to advance. Alright, so what I've got here is then, just to kind of recap, I did the sketch, or the shape layer, and that included, you know, the ball and cross, the oval, so you saw my construction lines, and then the basic large shapes that kind of put together or described my portrait. And then I came in with the eraser, and I dealt with all the areas that were lighter than this background. And all those were created from the light source that's off to my right side. And then once those were indicated, then I came in with the charcoal pencil and I indicated all the values that are darker than this gray tone. So what I now have is my roughed in tones, and then I'm just going to take a step back. I'm assessing it, I'm looking at it. I'm not so sure about this kind of this glow back here. I'm not quite sure what to do with it, but this is kind of a time where I could take a break and then come back to this, but I'm not, you know, for the video's purpose. So now, since I have my tones laid in, now I'm going to start moving into the mature area of the tones where I start blending, and then the idea of the edge layer starts to come into play. And with the edge layer, I want to start eliminating all my outlines. I want to eliminate the majority of my descriptive sketch lines, and then move in a direction where when tone meets tone, if they're two different tones, I don't reinforce it with an outline. I just let those two tones meet, but I observe to see what's the transition like between those tones. Is it soft or is it abrupt? Is it, you know, high contrast? So with that in mind, I'm going to come back to my click eraser, and we're going to deal with the lighter areas. So coming in and looking at the lights that are being cast on my face, I'm going to come up to the edges of those cast shadows, but shy of them because I want it to be soft between them. I'm going to give just a little bit more slight luminosity to the cornea of my eyes, and that's the white part of your eyes, just so those kind of pop slightly. Looking at the top of my nose, that's getting a fair amount of light also on this side of the nose, so just diluting the tonal work that's over here, not completely erasing it, just diluting it. And then on the tip of the nose, just slightly offset to this side, there's a strong highlight I'm just going to kind of grind it into the paper, but I can always come back with this area with my white charcoal pencil. So I can use my click eraser as a diluting tool, so kind of making the transition from the strong lighter areas to where it starts to go into shadow. I can tone it down per se by making that transition a little bit more softer. You notice I'm kind of always going in the same direction, and I can do this with a paper towel as well. If I had the dirty paper towel, if I wanted to go a little bit darker, I could do the same thing by toying with the tones. So I notice my upper lip is getting a lot of light. So I'm going to lighten the upper or the lower lip. And I've got sort of a glow right here because of the light source. I'm going to kind of emphasize that. I'm looking at how this stuff right here kind of changes. So in a sense, I'm kind of using the eraser to blend these areas, and it's working rather nicely. Here I'm just dragging it, but it's slightly lightening it so that the highlight tones transition nicely into that darker sort of gray. And really what you're trying to do is you're sculpting or modeling this surface with whatever tools that you find to resonate with your approach, and creating that smooth skin effect to the best of your ability. So skin is smooth, but then your hair has a different look to it. But then smooth skin is also different when it's in shadow versus when it's in light. And those are things that you need to be conscious about as you're making your drawing. What exactly is going on? What am I seeing? So I noticed the frames of my glasses pretty much cover up my eyebrows. So I'm just going in and making the frames of my glasses a little bit more defined. So I'm looking, making little funny sounds. I'm looking at the side as the frames go back behind my ear. And then I can use my click eraser to clean up the old sketchiness that I used to kind of put those glasses in. Clean them up. And then replace my shadow. When you do the holes or the nostrils, remember, go dark at the top of the opening, but as you come down to the bottom of the opening, you want it lighter, and that gives it that cave-like look. So high makes it look like it goes back into your sinuses, and then when it's light at the bottom, it looks like there's just a little bit of light at the entrance of the cave, and then visually it makes it, or gives it, depth. Alright, just kind of putting in the value on the sides of the nose. It's over on this side, it's more in shadow. So So as I'm looking here in the mirror, I noticed that this is pretty bright and this is kind of almost there. I just want to give a little bit more emphasis to the darks on this side so that it has more of a balanced look. There we go. Alright, I'm going to switch to a 4B, and I am going to go into my eyes and give them almost, more emphasis so that they kind of stand out a little bit more. And then these are going to be like the details per se, kind of pre-detail. So just hitting specific areas just to give it a little bit more of a depth to it, darkness. But without making strong outlines. I'm going to darken in that liner to my hoodie and the hood. That will really make that area jump. Looking at the other shadows and where they're at. Little drawstrings. There we go. All right, I'm gonna come in here. Let me use my other pencil. I'm going to tone down this glow that's going on back here. There we go. Kind of. That's better. Alright, so now I'm just going to go in as I'm looking. I'm going to kind of tune up areas, so I want to add a little bit more hair here. I think that's what was going on. It looked really strange. That looks more symmetrical. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to vary the background just to give this a little bit more interest. So I'm going to go about here, and I'm going to make this side darker, and I'm going to do that on the light side of my face. So what that'll do is, as it goes into shadow, I'll slightly probably darken it down here, but over here I want to give my lighter area more emphasis. So I can subtly just darken in the background by doing that. I think this will look pretty good. So just real quickly, filling it in, going in the same direction, going back over my back and forth stroke. And it's not going to be much of a value change. So just looking at that, it looks okay. I don't know if I like it how it bisects down the center. Maybe it'll grow on me. We'll see. See if I can live with it. So you notice as I come up towards the edge of my actual portrait, there's no strong outline, and as I kind of slightly go over the highlight sketch line that showed my head, it gets eliminated or destroyed. So that's one thing that you want to do in the edge layer, that you want to eliminate your sketch lines, outlines, any descriptive contour lines that really, I mean, their main purpose was to just lay out or map out specific large shapes in your drawing so you knew where to drop in your tones and highlights and such. But as you get towards the end of your drawing, you want to eliminate that map work. Alright. Now I'm going to come in with my blending stump. And I'm going to use my blending stump in a manner like I was using the click eraser. I am going to smooth out my tones. This is, again, this is the edge layer. But you'll find that this tool does a really great job in smoothing in the values. It lifts a certain amount of it, but you have smooth skin, so you want some sort of tool that will help you show that your skin is smooth and not rough, unless you're a rough, rugged person and have 5 o'clock shadow all the time and don't moisturize. So by doing this, you notice my rough, sort of chalky tones start to get absorbed into the drawing. They get moved around, sculpted, modeled. Using really light pressure as I'm hitting these areas. I'm not pressing very hard. I just want to move that material around. Now if you remember back when we drew the transparent glass object, remember what it said about how things look through transparent glass? Things will look slightly lighter visually when you're looking through the glass. So I'm going to want to let this be a little bit lighter than it is out here, so that I can give the illusion that my glasses have that transparent effect. And that they don't look as though there is no glasses there. Okay, so I've smoothed my skin out. So I'm going to come in with my white pencil, if I can find it. There it is. And so I'm going to use my white pencil in such a manner that I want to show my highlights, any glare, as well as giving my eyes just a little bit more emphasis. So as you're doing your details, you really need to look to see where these highlights are going to be, and then look at the shape that they're in. So that's the one on the tip of my nose. I'm going to kind of go around it, feather it out, and then go into the center of it and use a little bit more heavier pressure. And then I'm going to go into my eyes. I have a strong highlight here. I have one here. And one there. Going over to my other eye, I've got one here. Be careful not to rub my drawing out below. Kind of an illuminated area here, and I think it's when the light hits my lens, it casts almost like this glare onto my skin. I see it over here, right here, my eyelid. And I've got highlights on my glasses frames. And let's see right here. And I got a pretty powerful glare right here, as well as here. And by doing that, it really gives the illusion that your glasses are like windows, per se. Okay, I'm going to kind of looking at how my hair is being slightly illuminated from kind of behind me over to the left, and how that's affecting this side. There's my ear. This is almost like that reflection that you guys remember when you drew your egg and you got reflecting light off of the paper it was sitting on. So I'm barely laying in this white. And then I just touch it with my finger. Because remember, if you overlay down the white charcoal pencil and then blend it, it becomes extremely muddy. So you don't want to overblend it. But again, it's just a really great drawing tool for giving luminosity in a black and white charcoal drawing. Alright, so this edge layer is becoming more about the details. And the details that I'm seeing. And specifically where those details are at. As I finish this up. Alright, so that's enough of the white charcoal pencil. I'm going to come in back on my shadow side, and I'm just really unhappy with how this area is turning out. It just needs more shadow on the cheek. Something like that. Don't be afraid of the dark, Daryl. Oh, I forgot the highlights in the metal on my drawstring. Alright, so there it is. There's the portrait. I suppose I could go farther or longer. I would probably tweak the glasses one more time. You know, as I take a step back, it seems like this one's a little too squared out. This one's more elongated. You know, I could tweak that. I suppose I could tweak that right now. Just kind of rub out this area. Just give it just a hint of more of a length. And I got a little wide right here. Kind of erase that. Scrub out this area just a hint. And then just redefine the edge, but without making an outline. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Alright, so at this point I would take it outside, I would spray it and let it gas off for about 10 minutes before bringing it back inside, otherwise you will stink up the whole house. And then I would carefully pull my tape off and then it would be photo ready. Alright guys, well thanks for watching and I wish you luck. I hope that you have a good drawing that turns out. If you need any help, be sure to let me know.